So quiet. Where is everybody? Oh yeah, smoke break. Vape or not to vape? That is the question. If you're starting to vape because you want to quit smoking, I guess at minimum you follow your regular smoking routine. You take your smoking break and you vape. Once you start vaping more often than you did smoke and sneak vapes in the shop while during regular hours, that's a no-no. Another overheating issue where you have to solve a leak first before you can determine what the cause of the overheating was. Either the flange let loose and then it overheated and customer's just been adding water, or the thermostat is gone or is stuck. So remove the alternator, throttle body first, move the alternator, then you can get at the thermostat. While the thermostat is out, you can have a wiggle of the pump impeller to see if the pump impeller is broken. Then you put everything back together with new parts, and you check to see if radiator fans operate and if you get flow from the water pump. Obviously you can check the water pump by sticking your finger in there and trying to turn the impeller, but later on you're going to check for flow here. So I shouldn't have any more problems with my cooling system because you guys just overhauled the whole thing. No. All we did was replace the coolant flange, the cap, and the thermostat. There are many more hoses and flanges or parts of the cooling system that were stressed due to the overheating that you allowed. So time will tell. CV joints won't last long with broken boots. You can see there's water getting into the bearing, and that's washing out the grease. Even when it's dry or you have dry weather, the grease just flings out under while you're driving. The centrifugal force just throws the grease out. You can see some grease up on the steering knuckle. So if you see a broken CV boot, drive slow, maybe 10 miles an hour, and you can put it off for a while longer. Otherwise, replace it as soon as you can before bearing damage occurs. And here's a close-up of how I bypass a starter to check for ignition switch operation. Well, ignition switch operation here, you disconnect this red wire with black tracer. That's the starter trigger wire, disconnected from the post here. You can then stick your test light in there, and then you have somebody crank the engine or turn the key to start position, and the test light should light up. If it lights up, then you take a jumper wire, and if it lights up and the starter doesn't do anything, then you can double check it here as well. Connect a jumper wire to battery positive, that's the battery positive cable, and then every time you touch the solenoid here, the starter should spin. So in this case the starter is okay. Sometimes the biggest problem is getting these connectors off. You got to squeeze these pins. Different starters have different connections. Different manufacturers have different setups, different color codes. This one, like I said, is a red wire with a black tracer. There's the black tracer right there. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. You don't want to bridge this one. Basically what happens is the solenoid, when the solenoid triggers, there's the Bendix that pulls in, and then it bridges the heavy battery contact here with this one, and the current going from here to here is what causes the starter to turn. The first half of the solenoid, the trigger circuit here, just pulls the plunger in, which forces the starter drive out. Once the starter drive is out, these two make contact, and that's how your starter then turns. And obviously you can get to it from the top. I was just recording from underneath because the hoist was up, where the car was up on the hoist, and you actually have a better view from underneath, but you can reach everything from up here as I've shown in other videos. when replacing crank sensors, you want to make sure that the whole crank sensor comes out. This may look very nice and one piece-ish, but if you look in here, there's a black plastic ring. That's the plastic ring here still, so that needs to be removed. That's the ring that sits around this guy here, and if you leave it in place, then it's either going to get pushed into the engine, oil pan, or the new sensor won't fit. And you can see plastic is out, nice and clean. It's always a good idea to stick your finger in the hole to check to make sure it's clean. 2011 GTI 6-speed transmission removal video coming soon on YouTube, provided the video editing goes smoothly. Not too bad. Just some things you got to remove, obviously, to get at what you want to remove. In this case, dual mass flywheel clutch assembly. So we'll see how the editing goes. Maybe I'll post two videos, a quick version and a long version. 95 Eurovan, customer complaint is lack of heat, lack of AC. First thing I do when I hear that there's not enough heat or when there's not enough cooling, I check the vents for foam or signs of foam pieces. You can see a piece right there. Oops. And then I go under here, and I was going to use my bore scope, but come on. This air duct isn't even clicked in completely here, but you can see the shiny aluminum. Why is this thing taking pictures every time I zoom? You can see the shiny aluminum. That's the blend door. It's not focused. There it is. But you can also see the hole, the round circular shape there. That's actually the hole in the sheet metal. And that whole door, that blend door, is supposed to be covered in foam. So because that foam is missing, you have hot air and cold air that mix. Here are vents that have power door lock issues. It can usually be due to some number of things. One thing to keep in mind is when you lock the vehicle, and the locking pin pops right back up, causing everything else to unlock. Just feel the tension of this guy. Close the door and then physically push this down, and then let go of it. You can see this one's popping back up on its own, and it feels really springy. So what that tells me is that most likely the over center spring is broken in the lock mechanism down in here. So you disassemble this whole thing, and then either replace the latch assembly or get a over center spring from a different lock assembly, and then use it, install it in this one. Okay, here's the lock assembly. I just put it in the vise so I can work one-handedly. This is the over center spring that was broken, missing. So I just moved this lever over and put a used spring in there, moved it back, and now you can see when I move the this is the lock knob rod. When I move it, you can see that it clicks into place, and it opens and it closes. Opens, closes, and there's a bit of effort that I have to, right, I'm pulling, and then it overcomes it, and that's why it's called an over center spring. So I'm pushing, and it overcomes it, and then it stays. Before, it was so loose that it would just pull back up again, and that would cause the central locking to freak out. There's a new alternator here, or it looks new. But when looking at the thermal gun, I'll take a picture of it and I'll impose it, but I think you can see. Let me just take a picture real quick. Okay, so you can see the difference in color here between the outer, on the regulator here. right now there's 5 milliamp draw, and basically all I did was when I saw this hot spot or warm spot, all I did was loosen off the alternator cable here. I'm tightening it back down. I still have no draw now, but what I'm going to quickly do is just start it up and then shut it off. 1 second. Okay, so I started it again and then I shut it off and I locked the car. And you can see there's about 200 milliamps again. All I'm going to do is loosen the alternator nut. And you can see, dropped right down. So there's something going on with that alternator. That cable looks like it was soldered before. That's a separate issue. I don't think that's what's causing the draw. Unless there's a voltage drop because of the bad connection. But I can't see that being the case, because the alternator is not supposed to be drawing or should not allow flow. So I'm going to see if we installed the alternator. If not, we'll tell the customer to go back to whoever did get a warranty on it. If you ever need to know if the thermostat is opening and the radiator is getting warm and you don't want to stick your fingers in the core, just spray some water on the radiator itself, the core, and you can see the water steaming. That tells me that the radiator is getting warm due to coolant circulation. Rusty connections everywhere. Probably the connector itself too. I'm gonna pull that off. 1 second. It's more than just a single wire, but I will focus on the ground, clean it all up. He's gonna need a new circuit board. Alright, got a used connector in here now from our used connector collection. Heat shrunk, just butt connectors, heat shrunk, no solder. That's the old board. Let's see how bad it is. This is the good used one. Good enough for this one. The 2 liters have secondary air injection holes right here, and they come out inside there, so you have to make sure that they're not carboned up, otherwise you're going to get secondary air injection fault codes, insufficient flow. The air enters here, goes through this pipe. You got to make sure this guy is clear as well. You can see there's a bit of carbon there, and they can also carbon up. BEW BRM timing belt. Now is the time to do the camshaft position sensor. It's right here. That sensor can be replaced with the timing belt in place at a later time, but now it's obviously more convenient access. There's a rubber plug here. You just pop that out, remove the 10mm here, and then you just root it out of the little access hole where that rubber plug is, and then disconnect it right here. So when you're doing a timing belt, it's a good idea to do the camshaft sensor. Not necessary, like I said, you can change it afterwards. Sorry, took a picture, I don't know why. Another one. You can change it at a later time, but it doesn't matter. The sooner you do it, you don't have to worry about it.
So as you can see, only the little guy is spinning. So after any type of cooling system service, it's always good to double check or to verify operation. I know the fuse is good because the little guy is turning, so it's going to need a fan. Sometimes when you spin it, if there's a dead spot, it'll start spinning also. Obviously right now it's shut off because the fan switch turned off the power to the fans. But in this case now, since I did the timing belt, I had no idea that one of the fans was not working ahead of time. Now that I know this, I can phone the customer and ask him if he wants a radiator fan. It's not too difficult to do on this model, so might as well do it now. With the colder temperatures in wintertime, it's okay if only one of them is working. In the summertime though, especially when AC is involved, you want to have both fans working.
Customer complaining about a noise, knocking noise front wheel. Just had the winter tires put on by somebody else. All I did was take this cap off, and this is what I find. Somebody's in a hurry these days. Winter time, I guess. You know, swap tires quick. They tell you to come back in a week or so to retighten, and that's the reason they tell you, is because they, in case they missed tightening wheels, they want to make sure you come back so that they can make sure that all the wheels got tightened.